I think we've had like 20 different people staying in our guest room just so Santeri and myself have some different people to train with.
You are listening to All Jiu-Jitsu podcast. In this series, we're looking at the business side of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. In our episodes, we have conversations with professional athletes, BJJ brands, business experts, freelancers serving BJJ community, media personalities, and so on. In this episode, our guests are the Finnish BJJ duo, Emilia Tuukkanen and Santeri Lilius. They live and train in Spain, run a successful academy, LiliusBarnatt, and compete at the highest level. In this conversation, we talk about the intricacies of running an academy while maintaining an active competitive career. We also talk about business planning, facility management, and a bit of social media marketing and sponsorships. This podcast is brought to you by alljujitsu.com, the world's first complete business platform for BJJ professionals. We hope you enjoy this episode, and if you do, please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Hey guys, thanks very much for joining All Jiu-Jitsu podcast. So, Emilia and Santeri, how are you doing?
Good, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. We are extremely bored at home.
Brilliant. So let's start off with the quick explanation, a quick rendition of your names. I think a lot of people, I see so many times, people just kind of butchering your names. And Santeri is not even so bad compared to yours, Emilia, like your surname, but it's still in the commentary and everything, it's like all over the place. So how do you say your names?
Yeah, and I mean, it's like both of our, for example, Instagram handles are our names with the first name and surname. So it's quite easy to just check how to write it. But Santeri has been every possible version of Santoro, Santorini, Strande, everything. And I mean, usually people get Emilia right, but then my surname is just Tuukkanen, anything.
So I think a lot of people will be familiar with you, whether it's from competitions or from your kind of other appearances, social media, a lot of brands and stuff. But just a quick background on yourself, like how did you get started from Jiu-Jitsu? You're obviously from Finland. You're living in beautiful Malaga, in the Malaga region, let's say. But how did you get started with the whole Jiu-Jitsu game? Just briefly.
Yeah, I mean, I tried Thai boxing first. And well, it didn't really work for me because anytime anybody tried to punch me, I just closed my eyes. But it did start this like interest in martial arts. And then in my city, they had this like course for like basics, jiu-jitsu basics starting. And I went there with a friend and just got hooked.
So my story is quite similar. I used to play ice hockey until I was like 14, 15 years old, and I quit playing hockey, and I wanted to do something, and I actually went to karate first, but the coach, the karate sensei, he actually quite liked jiu-jitsu, and I figured it's karate because I had no idea, but we were doing like ankle lock escapes and like arm bars and whatever in karate class already. So after that I went to MMA, but my parents didn't like it, so they told me no more MMA, so I went to jiu-jitsu, and my idea was like, screw my parents, I'll only do this for a few years, and when I'm 18, I'm an adult, and I can do whatever I want. But it's been a long time since I've been an adult, and I'm still doing jiu-jitsu. So.
And at what point, I guess, have you decided, like, obviously, like, you got hooked like many other people are, from like after the first few classes, you know you want to do it, but at what point did you decide that this was something that you want to connect your entire life to?
Well, for me, it was like after winning the Nogi Europeans, because I was so bad before. I was like such a bad blue belt, and like already in a purple belt, I was so bad as well. And I wasn't like a really hard worker or anything, but I was naturally kind of good at it, but still not good enough. So I'd get my ass kicked like so often. But then for some, I don't know, I guess the stars aligned and everything, but I ended up winning London. Back then the Nogi Euros were in London in 2012, and I actually won 5 matches all by submission. I was like, shit, I'm a Nogi European champion, and I thought I sucked. So I figured maybe let's try actually training really and aiming for something. And it's been since I wanted to do this professionally forever, but I was so bad that I would have to say that in 2012 I actually started to like get something from it.
For me, I don't know if I ever had any kind of like a click or revelation that this is what I'm gonna do. It sort of just happened, and yeah, it really just happened that I started to doing really well in competitions and winning the Europeans and stuff like that, and suddenly it was a possibility. I never thought it would be a possibility, but suddenly it was possible for me to sort of live from jiu-jitsu, and then I did. Yeah. So not very like, glamorous, I guess.
Well, it rarely is, especially when you are at the lower belts. I think it's hard to make it glamorous beyond just winning the tournaments and kind of going. And then obviously you guys made a move to Spain from Finland. So how did that happen? Was it connected to jiu-jitsu? And also, was it? Were you already black belt? No, Emilia, I know you were not a black belt, but were you a black belt already, Santeri?
Oh, and Santeri was brown.
Yeah, I was a brown belt back then. So I actually studied in Finland. Has such a great system in school. So I actually studied sports science in school, and after finishing in the Institute of Sports in Finland, I got an offer to come to Spain to teach some jiu-jitsu. I was a hungry brown belt at the time, and I was doing quite well for myself. So I was like so keen into teaching and just living from jiu-jitsu. I would make a small salary, nothing crazy, but it was still enough for me to sort of pay half of the bills that I had at the time, and Emilia unfortunately had to work a little bit at the time to sort of let me do what I do. But we would always like teach classes in Finland, and that's why I studied sports as well, to sort of understand why and how to teach people. And but in Finland at those times it was almost impossible to live out of jiu-jitsu. Even in our town where we lived back then, no one was doing this full time. And even because the gyms don't pay you don't make a salary or anything from it. So it's just a club thing, especially back then. So I had opportunity to make even a little bit of income from jiu-jitsu. So we just took it. We just went for it straight away.
So it wasn't like a premeditated intention of, oh, one day, like, we're gonna make a move somewhere. It's just literally happened by, again, stars aligned and you got an invite.
Something like that. To be fair, we've never really actually planned anything. I definitely I've planned a lot of things, but they never really happened. So.
That's why, honestly, we're lucky if we ever get married. I mean, we've been engaged for a while, because it's just. I can't even start planning a wedding. It sounds like such a horrible job.
Because like this year, I had so many good plans. I bought all my flight tickets in time. I have a hotel in Abu Dhabi in 3 weeks. Coronavirus comes. So this is what I mean. I have like 5 different flights to destinations, to go to Worlds, to go to Abu Dhabi Worlds. Coronavirus.
And hotels also.
Hotels, paid. So like I'm not planning anything after this. I'll just freestyle it.
I was a couple of days ago, I was talking to my brother who he still lives in Russia, and he's about to get married, and so I'm definitely getting married this year, because this year is the only year you have a license not to invite people.
That's actually what I said. Oh, the list is shorter.
and nobody's gonna get upset about it. But another interesting thing you mentioned, Santeri, is so very few people in jiu-jitsu actually are educated, let's say, in teaching jiu-jitsu, right? So it's all just kind of, I study under a certain professor for a while, and then whenever I get my purple, brown, black belt, I will basically replicate what I've been taught and maybe add a few different bits and pieces, which is, again, it's a nice way of doing it. But how do you think the fact that you actually educated in sports science, and does that affect the way you teach? Does it make any difference? Does it make you look at things a bit differently?
I've always been a guy that's interested in why are we doing something and how are we doing me. as even if I'm in the class regularly or even especially now as an athlete, I always want to know why we're doing stuff. And no offense to anyone, but sometimes some of the classes that I've been to or we've been to, even at high level places, they've been not very planned, I would say. Some of them have been awful. Sometimes we've been doing like back in Finland, back when I started in like 2007, 2008, it used to be like a normal thing that in seminars we would do such a heavy warm up that no one could like walk afterwards. So we'd like run around, and sometimes we had Brazilian black belts, like high level 5-degree black belts, beating the shit out of us with their belt, and we would run around
or crawl around, and they would just like beat you as hard as they can with belts. And that was
so sort of the old school way of training was not what I wanted to do. And back then in Finland we had this small group of like young people. We all wanted to be like athletes, and we all wanted to train hard. So we sort of trained ourselves back at those times, and we would always like focus a lot on drilling and skipping all the warm-ups, the typical like push-ups and whatever, and like warm-up doing like in judo they do uchikomi, like repetition. So that's something we would do, and that was luck because we had no idea what we were doing, but it seems to sort of be now the innovative way of training. And I always followed what Olympic athletes do because I think they're the best athletes in the world, like Olympic judo players, wrestlers, especially the Russians. So I'd follow them, what they do. And they don't run around and do 45 minutes of warm-ups every single class. They have reasons why they do certain exercises, and that's partially why I went to the school. But don't get me wrong, most of the things that we've done there. So I have my own strength and conditioning coach, and he sort of has to tell me what I need to do and why I need to do, because God damn it, that school was so nice, but I don't remember too much.
Yeah, you might have partied a bit.
We might have partied a little bit over there.
So is that where you guys met in school?
No.
We met before.
Yeah, we met way before. I went to the school in like, I think I went there in 2011 after I did the army in Finland. I had some like local. Actually, my biggest merit at the time was I won the Finnish nationals in MMA. So I got in because I was the Finnish champion of MMA. But in that school, because I was around high level, but like the best football players we had in Finland, and the best ice hockey players were there, and there were a lot of like high level athletes, and it was great to be around them and like sort of learn from them and see what they do. And that's there I learned what it really means to be a professional athlete and getting paid, because I didn't get paid then. No one would give me anything. It's like a t-shirt a year.
And that's a sponsorship.
But these guys would get paid like a salary, like same as my parents would make. They would get paid, and they're young guys. Like they were maybe a few years older than me, but from them I really learned what it really like actually means to be an athlete.
Yeah, I think we'll get into that subject specifically in a while, which is, I think, again, something that we try to promote with all jiu-jitsu, is the professionalism. But yeah, we'll get into that. So moving on kind of down the timeline, so you've then came over to Spain, so down to Malaga. You started teaching in some other gym. I presume it wasn't your own gym that you right away got.
Yeah, so I got there was this, it was our Roger Gracie. I got my black belt from Roger Gracie, and it was a Roger Gracie affiliated school here, and I had an opportunity to teach over there. I spoke terrible Spanish at the time, but hey, I just took it because the memory of teaching classes was fresh in my head. So I was like, we just literally packed our things in the car, put the dog in the cargo, and we just left. We even brought our piece of shit car from Finland to here, and we just basically dove in head first. Yeah. And
what age were you there when you moved?
I think I was like...
Now it's been 5 years, so 22,
23. Yeah. I got my black belt. I was in Spain for quite some time. I think we came over in September, and I got my black belt in March 2015, and we came over September. So I was like 22, 23 by this time.
Yeah, so yeah, for a lot of people at this moment, it's probably like a start of like proper jiu-jitsu career, right? Well, you get people kind of at a younger age now getting the black belts and everything, but you're still fairly young. And so, did you have any doubts whether a responsibility of, well, maybe it came down later, this kind of thought. So let's backtrack a bit. So after that, you went on to open your own school eventually, right?
Happened in the 2016, 2017. I don't even remember.
Let me check. You can talk shit while I check.
But basically, jiu-jitsu politics got a little bit in the way because well, and then basically I was there, like I suddenly stopped working there. Let's call it that, and. So by that time, I already met my current business partner, LiliusBarnatt. He is a British. Yeah, 2016. God damn, we had to look it up on Facebook.
Oops.
So I met my business partner already back then. He actually came to teach MMA at the same place we used to be, where I started to teach jiu-jitsu. But sort of similar thing happened with him, and suddenly we found ourselves with really no jobs and no gyms. And back then, well, and still as of now, we both had an active career, and we still have. But
once the lockdown is over and there's actually something to do with
but
jiu-jitsu.
back then, we didn't really have any place to train or anything, so that's how we sort of decided that let's just do something together, because we could run a gym. That's what we always said to each other.
Yeah, so it was kind of a mutual understanding. And so being an active athlete, how did any kind of negative thoughts cripple in somehow? Say, okay, how are we going to manage to look after the business, teach classes, and getting enough training? And
I think anyone that ever opens a gym, especially if you're a competitor, you're gonna have a little dip in your career, like I did. I definitely had a dip back then, because basically it's not about your training anymore. And also, if you start from the zero, or if you start from fairly low level, you don't really have many people to sort of challenge you. And I definitely had a dip. I think everyone else that has been in the same situation probably also has had some sort of a dip. I think it's impossible to open a school, be active there, and also maintain your level at the highest at those times. But like now, I'm better than ever. It's been a few years since we've done that, but it takes time.
And what if you were to give advice to somebody who is in a similar position? Because I think a lot of people these days are finding themselves at the crossroads, right? I need to make money out of this. I have an opportunity to open an academy, but I also want to compete and travel and all those things associated with this. So let's say they make a decision to go with an academy. How would you, like, with knowing everything you know now, what would you do differently, or what would your advice be in relation to avoiding the dip, or maybe trying to smoothen it out as much as possible?
Well, I wouldn't do anything differently, because I didn't have the chance to do anything possibly. So what I've always done, I had a small dip, but not that big. First ever tournament I did whilst having my gym was the IBJJ Rome Open, and I won it. So like it wasn't like I went from winning to a losing streak, but it was maybe sometimes, when I should be resting, I need to be there over there handling some issues or things like this.
Or teaching a class.
So in the beginning, like a lot of people, they take on way too many classes when they open a gym. So maybe they want to run a similar program as some other schools, but it's only one person or two persons. So you're just teaching and teaching and teaching. So basically the time other people are using to recover, you're not recovering.
Or even have a life.
A life. But like I think if you are in the situation where I was, you're young, you're gonna open a gym, just go for it and embrace it, because it's and it's almost like an investment also for your future. Because I don't know if we have too many people that don't have a place and are still competing at the high level here in Europe. I can't think of many people. Almost everyone who is a high level athlete also have some sort of teaching responsibility, which I guess is normal. It's not like in Olympic arts, in judo, where athletes are athletes, because still this is fairly an amateur sport compared to some others. So I think if you're in my situation, just go for it, embrace it, and focus on your training as well, and don't forget to delegate. That's one of the biggest issues I ever had, because I'm like, oh, I just do everything myself. And after like 2 weeks of having the gym, I was like in a burnout, because we used to teach so much and going to different places and training and whatever. But it's great.
Like, you have to have the right people around you who support you and can help you, and you can't be afraid of asking for help, even if it's like you need a website, you need marketing, you need social media, then you need people to actually clean your gym, you need other people to teach your classes, everything like that. And then something that, like, that's one thing, like delegating and having the right people around you and working for the gym. And then the other thing that I think Santeri has done really well, but he maybe didn't realize or didn't remember, when you start a gym, you really have to bring people to train with you, not to teach seminars, but actually bring other high-level people, invite them. Hey, come stay with us for a week. You can stay in our house. The beach is there. I mean, for us, it's easy to ask people to come here because it's such a nice place. And then just train with me, just spar with me every day. Yeah. So I have some high-level sparring partners constantly, and different sparring partners. I think you brought 20 people. I think we've had like 20 different people staying in our guest room, just so Santeri and myself have some different people to train with.
And the invitation is still open. So anyone who can give me either whoop my ass or be close to whooping my ass, you're more than welcome to come.
We have you
can stay with us.
We have a jiu-jitsu Airbnb. There's still a pool, open. Beach, shopping, nice food, good wine. All you have to do is kick Santeri's ass, really.
It's very interesting approach, and I think it's a smart approach, because again, you're making the best out of the resources that you have. Sometimes it's not your resources per se, but it's the surroundings and the fact that the area is attractive for touristic purposes, right? I think it makes a difference.
Something I could add for that is, and also I think when I started, since my business partner is heavily involved in MMA, something that I started to do was training with them. Because when we started, obviously I brought in some people that train with me, but also he brought in some MMA guys. So what I would do is wrestle with them. I don't want them to beat me up, but like I'll wrestle with them. And I got heavily into like doing judo and wrestling because of those times. Because maybe in jiu-jitsu, maybe not so many people could challenge me at the time, but in wrestling or in judo, definitely there was enough people to sort of give me a hard run. So if it's any way possible, even if you have a gym or you're doing that, try to challenge yourself in some aspects of the game every single day.
But that's really like, you can't have an ego. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do that. And that's the thing with many people I know, like, well, not maybe like people I know, not personally, but like, I think that the ego comes there and they don't want to invite people. They don't want to go out of their comfort zone and get beat up, really. And that's the problem, especially if you have your own gym. Like, you need to have people who can beat you up.
I think I'm a little bit simple, because I always see, there's this guy in Finland, great ADCC, 2 times ADCC European champion, and Jesse Urholin is his name, very, very high level guy. And I didn't know him at the time or anything, but I just saw that his style would be terrible against me. Like, he's one of the hardest matchups ever for me. So I just sent him a message on Facebook, like, hey, Jesse, you probably don't know me, but I know you. Would you want to come to Spain if I pay your flight tickets? And he was so cool. He was like, hey, don't even worry about paying the flight tickets. When could I come? And he came, and we trained, and it was terrible, but it was so good also. And now it's been like 5-6 times since he's been here. You know, things like this you can do always.
Yeah, and if you don't ask, you don't get, right? And you have to have no ego first, especially when you're right, Emilia, saying how do you present yourself in front of your students? So I would not have to battle with this idea, because like I'm not like some form of a high level athlete or anything like this, but still being the black belt in the academy. But I preach people to be open to being beat up, to be honest with their jiu-jitsu, right? You know, if you are either good or you're bad in a particular sense, and you only know if you get exposed. If you don't get exposed, you're lying to yourself, you're lying to your students. And I don't unfortunately have a sunny beach. Yeah, the way I would solve this is I would organize seminars literally with people that I want to train with. Obviously we have a lot of good guys around in Dublin, but when you are teaching all the time, you literally need somebody over at your place. I don't always have time to go elsewhere. And
he asked me to, because I had one of my first seminars ever at your gym.
And it was our first seminar ever in our gym.
Oh!
So yeah, I was a purple belt when we found ourselves in the circumstances where we had to open the gym. It wasn't a deliberate choice. It was like, well, we know how to train. So we've opened the gym, and I was literally turned to say, okay, who do you want to train with? I was like, well, this girl Emilia looks nice. So you were brown belt at the time, so so you were our first ever seminar, and we've organized many seminars since. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's, I think, good tips for people again finding themselves in a similar position. I guess it's some form of a blessed state to be in, right, where you can open your school and do something and make having these problems. I think it's quite good problems to have in the first place. But tell me one other thing. So you've opened, you said, the gym with LiliusBarnatt. So first of all, what is it like having a partner, and how is it like organized, and how do you make sure that everything runs smoothly?
Well, again, delegation. I think a partnership with anyone is like a marriage. You'll have your good days and you'll have your days when nothing really works. I'm not married, but I imagine that's how marriage is. And it's the same thing when you have a partner. We're lucky because basically we don't often run into problems that directly are for the both of us. Usually it's like because he handles our MMA side and I handle or I sort of run the jiu-jitsu program there. So usually it's either one's problem. So not many times we have to sort of agree on something large. But you'll have your days when you argue, and you'll have your days when everything runs smoothly. But I guess that's partnerships in anything. And also something we've been really lucky with is that we've sort of found the right people to also work with us and then sort of help us. Like we have a great gym facility manager. It's this Italian couple actually. They're both of them sort of run the gym with us, and then they've been really a blessing for us because also having fresh set of eyes in the business is great, and then sort of outside view is always great when it comes to like, because sometimes me and him, we have such a stupid problems in our lives as well. You know, he's an active cage fighter and I do jiu-jitsu at a high level. So sometimes we're worried about maybe our tournaments and whatever, whereas we should focus on the gym. But that's when we always have somebody to ask for, like, hey, I'm preparing for this match. Could you please run the things a little bit for a while? And to be fair, the Italians, our gym facility manager, they sort of run the gym for us. So sometimes I feel like they're our bosses, which is good.
That's great. Yeah. So I remember. So it's Andrea you're talking about, right? So I remember when we came over and trained at your place a couple of years back. It felt very much organized, everything structured. So how is your school structured overall? Is there anybody else involved aside from the two of you plus instructors and Andrea as a facility manager?
So when you guys came to visit us, that was quite in the beginning of our stages. So actually now, right now, the whole place is that's in your part of town. And there was a police siren. So so yeah, right now we have the whole place to us, which is the place is quite big. We also have a massive tatami there that you haven't probably seen. It's quite big. I think we have 340 square meters of tatami there, so it's quite big. And we also have a brand new cage over there. And upstairs there was a second how do you call it, planta, like level, and that we have rented it out for other martial arts just to generate some cash flow, to be fair. But it's basically me, Luke, Andrea, the facility manager, and his fiancee Federica that sort of run the day-to-day stuff. And then obviously Emilia is a massive help in everything. She's been there doing those tatamis and whatever we sort of need. And then we have our coaching staff as well. We have quite a lot of people who teach for us and things like this. So it's not always just me and him there, because I think it also waters our teaching if we teach every single time. So
Yeah. And in terms of your clientele, right, your audience, your demographics, do you find that you mostly have local people, or is there a large stream of like tourists that come over and train?
So I would say the base is our local people, because we have visitors all the time.
Well, probably will be a while before we have visitors again.
Yeah, might be a little while, but the base of our students are locals, are the Spanish. So we have those, but then we do have visitors quite. Actually, I don't think we've ever had a month or maybe even a week when there hasn't been somebody visiting us, because I think people come here and our marketing is quite good thanks to Emilia, so people do find us often. So they come over, and the system of how you come in and whatever, we've worked on it for quite a lot, and it's quite easy for them to come, pay, change their gear, come in to train, and that's it. So I wanted to make it as easy as possible for everyone.
And as far as I remember, you don't handle any money issues, so it's all Andrea as a manager.
Well, I wouldn't say I don't handle any money.
Is as in not money issues, that was probably wrongly put by me, but customer money.
Somebody in the front desk to sort of gather the monthly payments, and then the visitors will be attended at the same way. We also have laundry business right now, so you can rent a kimono if you come without one, and then you just leave it there and we'll wash it, and you can even rent it for longer periods of time. So if you're there for a week, we'll always have a fresh kimono for you every single day.
That's very good. And in terms of the wider money issues that we touched on, the one that you misunderstood initially, but or I misrepresented, but let's move to that part. So in terms of handling the finance, do you do that yourself? Do you hire anybody? Do you outsource any parts of your kind of financial issues?
I mean, obviously we have an accountant to make sure that everything is sort of legal and whatnot, but basically the day-to-day stuff we handle ourselves. So we pay the bills, we pay the rent, the utilities, the whatnot. And these sort of things we run ourselves, but of course things have to be legal. So we do have somebody sort of checking out that we don't break any laws without meaning to.
And in terms of your initial setup and your growth, again, without going to any specifics, but have you had any relationships with the banks, with financing institutions? Did you have to take out loans or anything like this, or was it purely organic, kind of from your own funds?
So I'm so lucky again, because I know this. Probably you met him. I won't call his name because he's due to few reasons. I can't say his name, but I have this friend, and he's a master's degree in business. So he sort of helped us structure a really good way of growing our cash flow without putting too much of our own money into it. So everything that we've done, we've sort of saved money, spent it, and we've never actually had no loans, no finances, no nothing. We don't owe anybody a euro at these times. And everything that we've done, we've sort of done it really slowly and smartly, I would say, because in the beginning when you start to run a gym and maybe you go from having 20 students to getting 30, that's already 10 new students, so that's some cash. So some people would and do something with it. But what we've always done really smart is we save so much money sort of to improvise the facility and to improvise sort of the training, to improve improvise
Yeah.
to improve the situation. Because what's really been most important for me and Luke and everyone else is that the facility is good enough for us to train at it. And in the beginning, it was not. Now it's getting to the stage where I can look at it and be like, oh, obviously there is so many things that I want to work on. As I'm probably, you as a gym owner, you also see the place totally with a different view than everyone else does. But we've always saved a lot of, if we ever make 50 euros extra, we always save it and spend it on something that we do need. Like, we have a great audio system at the gym, we have a great tatami there, we have a great cage, but me and Emilia drive a piece of shit car. And we don't have anything super expensive in our life, but we have a great gym. So that's more important for me and Luke and everyone else.
Yeah, and I'd say at the start, I think, yeah, you have to prioritize, right? You have to understand what's the essential parts for your gym, because you can always buy a bunch of fancy things, right? You can, I see some gyms like, oh, we have a dummy for every person there is in the gym. It's like, why would you have that? Or like,
something that Luke can definitely tell everyone is that I'm such a cheap ass. I want to spend money on nothing. I always want to get the best deal. I think we've been looking for, like, we have this timer and we need this support system on it so it can be on the wall. And I think I've been looking for one for like a year, because I just refuse to pay the 75 euros that it is online. Because once I saw one for 45 and I'm looking for it. So, like, I want to spend money on nothing.
and good. And how did that kind of mentality and understanding of things come about? Is that always something that you just always had, part of your kind of growing up and understanding issues, or you said somebody helped you out in terms of your structure? But what I find is, like, I think there's something, let's say the financial literacy and the understanding in the jiu-jitsu community can vary quite a bit from place to place, or from person to person. So
so when we found the gym, we actually had a lot of meetings with this financial advisor, I would call him. So me and Luke and him, we would meet up, and he sort of helped us structure the way to sort of run this business. And it's all about also knowing where you are and what can you expect, because here where we live in southern Spain, it's much different than Finland, for instance. In here, the average salary is a low salary in Finland. So we always have to remember that when we do. That's why for us to run high level seminars is extremely difficult, because sometimes, like, I definitely understand that in America it's quite common to pay 100 for a seminar or whatever, but it can be 1/8 of what somebody makes here a month. So they just can't put 100 towards a seminar, which I understand, but some of the top people sometimes don't understand when I tell them what I can pay and what I can't pay.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense, and that's another conversation I've had many times, and that's why, for example, in our gym as well, even though Ireland perhaps is higher on the income scale than Spain, but we still most of the times won't be able to afford people from US, because the economics and the economy of jiu-jitsu is entirely different. It's like a different world altogether, because the way I look at it is, it's not a big issue paying $100 for a seminar if you are paying $250 for a month of training, right? So yeah, in my books, it's roughly, again, it's as a rule of thumb, it should probably be in around about half of the monthly membership fee, right? So, if you're paying, 60 euro per month to train, you probably can afford about, 30 euro of a seminar, so something along those lines, plus minus, obviously. But yeah, you have to take that into account. But also another side of it is, obviously, for the guys that are teaching seminars, it's also sometimes opportunity cost, and also the kind of question of image. So it's a free market, so you can always name your price, and if the price doesn't suit, it just doesn't happen. And thankfully there's other ways of making the training happen. So that's pretty good. And another question on the academy is the facility. So you said you have quite large facilities. So was it easy to kind of negotiate the lease, and how is that relationship with the landlord?
We have a really good relationship with the landlord, and he actually has a business right next to us. He and I had no idea because we used to just lease part of the whole building, and then sort of the lady who would run the whole business, she had to shut down, and me and Luke were like, okay, let's just try. Like we probably like quadrupled our expenses over a few weeks, but we just went for it. And I myself negotiated the whole deal in Spanish, me in person, and I speak relatively good Spanish, but it's not that great that I can understand all the legal terms and everything. But I just did it. Still have no idea how I pulled it out. And but I went in, and the guy who owns the building where we are, he's a businessman. He's been in the game forever, and he knows all the tricks. So I really had to like, first of all, like translate everything in my mind to English, and then from English to Finnish, and then like do the whole thing back. So I probably looked like a retard, like answering him and like negotiating. But we worked out a good deal for both of us, and it's been a good relationship as well, since he owns a company that produces, for instance, like carpets and like things we can use to decorate the gym and whatever. So actually, if we ever need to do some improvement, we can just go to next door and we'll get it with a steep discount. So it's a good relationship.
Very nice, and thankfully it doesn't rain too much over where you are, so you don't have leak problems or anything like this.
We used to have it. We used to. God damn that. This was before we leased the whole place. So we used to actually. Whenever it rained, I used to have like 1 meter puddle in my tatami, and I kept on saying the the lady who ran the whole facility, that we need to fix this, but I think it took too long. But one word about this to the new owner, to the current owner, we've never had any issues with the facility since. So.
And how long is your lease for?
It's still 2024, but then we have a 5-year option as well.
Extension, yeah.
Extension,
so quite long term. That's perfect. And I know also, just again from my past visit, I know there's not many schools around, but there are a few. So what's your view on kind of the competitive scene in there? Do you think you compete with other gyms, or?
I think because we aim for what's actually crazy here in Spain, as probably you guys remember, we all train together.
Yeah.
So we don't really we don't go there because they're these guys or whatever. If somebody's good, I'm training with you, even if you like it or don't. So
we have open mats that are open at different gyms that are all open for all of the gyms in the local areas, and it's really nice. We have good relationships,
and they're always free of charge, so you can expect to come here to Spain, and if you want to be a cheap ass, you can train almost every day at an open mat. You don't have to pay a single euro for that. But I would say, obviously, there is some sort of competition when you both do the same thing. But I think what we offer for a lot of people is totally different than what some other gyms open, because we offer, for instance, UFC level experience. We have had 2 fighters in the UFC. We have few currently in the Russian, the ACB, which is one of the main leagues. We have this female that'll be in the UFC any moment now. So. And then in jiu-jitsu, we have us. Obviously, we have a really strong presence in the masters team. Actually, we have a masters world champion training with us. We have masters European champions, many. And then we have a lot of kids. So we aim for much more like competition style as well. And that attracts a lot of people who also don't want to compete. But since it's kind of cool training at the place where the training, and then there is a lot of high-level people and good fighters, people do come for that. And then obviously we have the kids program, and that's even something many places don't do here, is kids. We do kids. I'll do elderly if that would be a possibility.
So it's catering to slightly different demographics, I think. I agree with that. And I remember, I think the fact that you guys have these open mats during the entire week, people training here, training there. I think the overall scene is growing. The overall scene is getting better reputation. So somebody choosing even a holiday destination can think, hey, I know there's good training happening in Malaga. why don't we go there, because we can train here and there with different guys, so we don't have to be attached to one particular gym. So yeah, that's pretty good. So moving on from the academy things, so your name popped up a couple of times in other conversations that I had in relation to the understanding of your image as professional athletes and what you can offer to potential sponsors, right? So, which again, I think the clarity overall is missing a little bit. Okay, in terms of what you can offer versus what the expectations of potential sponsors are. So you are kind of known for your kind of deep relationship with Scramble, right? So a lot of the, even now you guys are wearing the Scramble stuff. So for people who don't see this, but which is again an important thing, that you actually believe in what you do, in who you represent. But talk to us a little bit about your relationships with the sponsors. You have numerous, and how do you kind of cultivate that, and how do you view yourself, and what are you actually selling, because it's a two-way sale, right? They give you something for something.
Well, I think what is quite important for people to understand, especially if you don't have any sponsors and you want to get some, is you have to ask. If you don't ask, no one's gonna go and like spot me on the street and go, "Hey, Santeri,
you want some money?
here's $3,000. Why don't you take this and do something cool with it?" You have to ask, and I've always been a good guy in asking. I've probably emailed every single company in the world. I even messaged Scramble, and God damn it, they didn't answer to me when I was a brown belt, I think. I just got silver place at the Euros, and I was like, Scramble sponsorship, and they didn't even answer. That was heartbreaking. But I think for us, which has been always good, is that we are sort of like a unit. We've never had like a sponsor that doesn't work with both of us when it comes to like what we wear and whatnot. So it's always been quite
like we're a package deal sort of, and it's in a good way for the brands as well, because they get two people, not for the price of one, but
definitely not.
No, but they do get two people who it already helps. Like we can take the pictures of each other. They can get one picture where you have the both male and female products that they have, anything like that. So that's been something that helped us stand out from others, maybe from early on.
And I've always been good at talking about like money and things that I want. So and Emilia is so bad at it.
It's still. Literally like, because he likes to haggle. So it's always when I want something, but I don't want to pay for it. So then I just pretend that I don't speak the language, and somebody has to go in and haggle a good price for me. And it's the same way with sponsors, really.
It's not that aggressive, but I do those with like street vendors all the time. Like in London, they sell those like mandala phone cases. And Emilia really wanted one, but she didn't want to pay like £20 for it. And she was like, "Oh, can you ask?" And I was like, "Oh, can I?" And I like arm wrestled with the guy. It's
his favorite hobby.
And in the end, I got two for £7, and he even changed the screen on my phone. So.
And I just pretend that I don't speak any English.
But yeah, with sponsors, we've always sort of worked together in this. I think when we started, like I definitely at 2012 when I won the Nogi Euros, I had no sponsors. That's what I find weird sometimes is you have like blue belts and even sometimes white belts, or maybe even purple belts who are like, oh, like why can't I get a sponsorship? And like I'm national champion, but like unless you have really appetizing social media page or something really specific that you do, or you have a lot of titles, at this moment it's hard to get sponsored, or at least good sponsorship deals if you are still at the, I wouldn't say beginning, but if you're in the halfway.
That's actually something that is sort of related, that when people say they are sponsored, when they actually just might get some gear for free and maybe some discounts. So they even might have to pay for the gear, but they get like minus 15%, and then they have to give out the code. Like with code Emilia, you get minus 15%. That's not sponsorship. That's just collaboration or getting a discount. And that's something that a lot of the lower belts maybe do because they want to say that they are sponsored, but they are actually not. And that makes it a lot harder in the future to actually get sponsors because companies are used to getting everything they should get from a sponsored athlete without actually having to financially sponsor anybody.
Yeah, no, it does make a lot of sense. Like it's kind of two ways to think about it, I guess. Partially, it's if you can get any benefit out of anything at all when you are trying to compete and everything, it's you'll get it, right. It's like, well, if I get some free gear, I'll get some free gear, but there's a whole kind of market and perception of its own, right? I think I'm convinced there are people who would actually pay themselves to have that label. I'm a sponsored athlete, and I guess that's just kind of the game of ego, and there's a place for it, and I think that will always happen until there's more kind of professionalism in the sport, but also for the beginners, like being sponsored. In such a saturated market, you need to understand that you are also a customer of most of these companies, right? So this is, I think, what people are missing. It's like, why am I not getting sponsored? Because, well, they want you to buy their things. Do you know what I mean? Like you are literally the customer. If everybody like you, who is like, doesn't matter how talented you are or how good you are, like uber super talented people will get picked up by sponsors. They will, you know what I mean? You see that these guys that are few stars in the making, they will get picked up by sponsors. But if everybody who wins a medal in a competition, in a vast amount of competitions, in a vast amount of divisions and weight classes and ages, gets sponsored, these companies will not have customers because everybody wins something. So you can...
Sponsored. I think, because it's funny, I think in other sports, like in ice hockey, we didn't get sponsored. We had to pay our own stuff, and some of the guys, even I played for sort of like a national team back then. So we weren't sponsored, and that was already like quite high level. So the guys that did well on those games, they ended up being like professionals and making a lot of money, but there are steps in the system. But I think in jiu-jitsu sometimes you do well in a tournament, and I think if you do well in like a big tournament, you are a prodigy, you're good, you should get picked up. But if you are maybe still working your way up and like still don't expect anything from anyone, just keep working and keep doing what you can and keep sending those emails is what I would say.
Yeah, again, it doesn't harm asking, obviously. So again, being realistic about the expectations, but also not being shy in terms of asking. And if you don't ask, you don't get, I guess. But what also I'm curious about is your kind of self-awareness, right? So you said you understand where you stand in terms of like, oh, we have an image of a couple that is, of fairly high level. Also, in a nice look, again, you kind of making the best out of your location because you always, your social media is filled with nice scenery and the sun and everything. But what do you feel your responsibilities are then once you do get picked up by a sponsor? Once you have a relationship, what do you see yourself not owing, but like your duty? Because again, it's something for something. If you just there, it's like you can't get sponsored just out of competing and not doing any social media activity, not promoting your sponsor at all. So what do you view your duties as?
Well, I also think you have to understand that it's a business of selling something, so you have to be able to generate some sales for, like what I've noticed at the gym, even before we started to actually like have any scramble products for sale, or we have great plans on this in the future, but like people do wear what we wear. Like we see quite a lot of people wearing scramble now, whereas when we wore gameness, they wore gameness. So it's that, but also you have to, like I've done like kimono orders and like ask people would they be interested in buying something, and if they need anything, I can sort of hook them up with a 1% discount or whatever. So it's quite important for us to always generate sales.
You have to be proactive. Like you have to really think like sort of as if it was your own company. Like if it was my own company and I had a sponsored athlete, what would I want them to do? Like when I go to the beach, of course I'm gonna have my scrambled slippers on. I'm gonna take a nice picture of my feet. That's a whole other discussion about the feet pics though. But I'm gonna take a nice picture, put it in my stories, tag Scramble, make sure that they see it so they can then repost it in their own stories.
Things like this. We oftentimes like organize a photo shoot and we just send the photos to Scramble, for instance, to use. So then it's like they don't have to do that for us, but we'll do it for them, because also it's quite nice to do those photo shoots. And we don't help them, but we give them some content that they can use without them even asking for it or things like this.
Because it's so difficult to get content, constantly different and new, fresh content for social media. So if we can help them in such way, perfect.
Yeah, and I think they will in turn, and I know they do value that that fact, because again, from a business standpoint, to organize all of this stuff is a pain, in addition to all the other things you need to run in the business. And then when suddenly someone says, "Oh, this is perfect and ready to be posted, ready to be promoted," it's you can't beat that. It's like Christmas every time that you do things. So, and Emilia, you are a social media pro, right? So you're running the social media for LiliusBarnatt. You also obviously run your own successful Instagram account, and you also before we go to also talk to us about the running of the social media. What is your approach to the social media, both your own and your academy? How do you make because they're slightly different profiles, so how do you make both succeed, and what are your goals with both of them?
Well, my tips for gym is you might have a really beautiful feed with all photos of these beautiful white tatamis and everybody wearing white gis and everything so clean and nice. But what I've noticed, and this has been through trial and error really, is that doesn't really make new people want to start. Like, it makes them intimidated, because me and Santeri, we're black belts. We've done jiu-jitsu for years. We know what AOJ is. We know what the jiu-jitsu trends are in the gyms. But if you are looking to start a new hobby that you know nothing about, it might seem really intimidating and feeling like, oh, I'm not fancy enough for this. So I'm really trying to keep our social media more inviting, more real, really personal, sometimes something funny. I try to post pictures mostly of our students, not of Luke and Santeri or me, of our students, and tag them and make them feel appreciated and really show that we have normal people training. Like, we have kids, we have older people. We have one 73-year-old.
72.
No, he had a birthday, just like 73-year-old. We have a lot of women, everything. So that's something that I try to make sure that on LiliusBarnatt's Instagram you can see, and Facebook, that it's normal people and everybody's welcome and everybody's invited to the trainings and you can come try for free and everything like that. Because if it's too fancy, they just, at least that's here in Spain. It can be different in other locations, but at least here in southern Spain, it has to be really real. It can't be too fancy.
Yeah, it's almost distinguishing who you're posting this for. You need to recognize your audience, right? So a lot of the times I find, like, if you managing your account, like, you're posting it for yourself almost. Look how cool I look. And you can do that with your personal page, by all means. And you can say, I don't actually care what anybody thinks. But if you're actually using your social media to drive your business, you need to recognize who your audience is. And that's the key.
Like, I would love nothing more than to just post all these beautiful white pictures of our beautiful white tatami with all the lights and empty space and everything. But it's not for me. Our social media is not for me.
Yeah. And then how does that differ from your own timeline?
Honest, at the moment, my own Instagram and Facebook has always been just me. Like, especially in my stories, you can really see what kind of a person I am. But I don't really, and this sounds horrible, but I don't really think too much about what I post on my own personal social media, just because I don't want to lie. or I don't want to try to seem fancier than I am. So I do post photos that I like. When somebody takes a photo of me that I like, I'm gonna put it up. I might put something really short in the caption, or sometimes something funny, just really however I might feel at that moment. But I've noticed that stories are really, really more in at the moment, and you can also be a lot more free in the stories.
Yeah, it's like something to do. It's like a less of a commitment than a big post, and you're not obliged to write anything with it, but very engaging nonetheless. And so then tell us a little bit about your kind of side venture. So you at some point realized that, do you know what I mean? There's other ways of doing things and making money, and so you opened your marketing agency, right? Digital marketing. So tell us a little bit about that.
So basically, it's because my dad has a furniture company in Finland, and then we have the gym. So I started to doing social media for those two, and really through trial and error, I found all these tricks and tips and what to do or what not to do on social media, and had to learn about ads manager and all the campaigns and how to create everything and all that kind of stuff, as well as content creation and really reading the statistics and everything. And then I realized like I can actually do something with this knowledge. And I basically set up my own, it's really online marketing, because I do dabble a little bit with SEO with my clients, like if they need it. And also I do create some basic websites, but it is social media. So, and really with social media, I mean Instagram and Facebook marketing. So I do everything from creating the content to posting it, scheduling ads, scheduling posts, boosting ads manager, creating all these customer lookalike audiences, looking for groups for the client, and just everything really with my clients. And it's nice because I can more or less have my own schedule, and I can work around like for example my training and trips and stuff like that, because everything is online. I just need a good Wi-Fi and that's it.
Yeah. It's very interesting, because one of the avenues that we're trying to explore with this podcast is, and you people will probably hear me repeating this kind of the similar type of sentences over and over, but is the different ways for people to make a living out of jiu-jitsu, or maybe spin-offs of something that you learn in jiu-jitsu. So essentially you started with your own brand with the academy, and that came as a spin-off into something almost unrelated, but still as a result of that. So how can people make money or make a living, not necessarily make money, but make a living, to whether it's to support the competitive career or do something outside of the traditional means of opening an academy, which might not be an option for whatever reason, or teaching seminars. So those are kind of the primary two, right? It's either you teaching, delivering some form of like live content, or you have an academy. So what do people do? What can people do? And I think your example in that regard is very, very interesting. It's like it came off jiu-jitsu, it came from jiu-jitsu, you got your notoriety from jiu-jitsu, but you've spinned it off to something entirely unrelated.
I had to learn social media for myself to be able to get sponsored, to be able to compete and train. So it's really that. And my next passion, I could say, is I actually really want to help gyms, like martial arts gyms. And I'm designing and trying to think of like a service that basically any gym that needs any help with their marketing, they could contact me, and for different amount of money I would review their social media and just give them like a long email of everything they should change, what they're doing well, tips, anything like that, sort of like an analyst.
Yeah.
And they don't have to hire me for like 6 months or 3 months to actually do it, but they can buy sort of my expertise in one email and then start working on it themselves.
I know a company who can help you with that. the new features on all jiu-jitsu will be in the full in the full shining after this one. That
We can make a deal about that right now.
exactly. So yeah, that's very interesting. So, and one last question just before we wrap it up is in relation to the state of the overall kind of, if you have any thoughts, you might not, on jiu-jitsu industry, the level of professionalism, the level of the economy. We already mentioned it's slightly different in the States versus like Europe, for instance. But how do we go about growing our sport? How do we go about making it more professional? And any one or two thoughts, if you have any.
Well, I think it's also time, because if you look at because I'm so fed up in seeing like older, I don't want to say old, but older level black belts who are teaching something that probably does not work. But since maybe they haven't had an extensive competition career, or they haven't coached anyone at the high level, they're just teaching some stuff that would not work. And I think that's due to this being a relatively new sport, because that doesn't happen. You're never going to find a 65-year-old boxer who tells everyone that he's the shit, but he's never actually competed, nor has he trained anyone else, and he would still have a following. But in jiu-jitsu, you do meet some people who maybe are not as legit as they could have been had they worked hard, and their ego would have been lower, but still they have quite a big following around them. And that's something that I think is about to go away, especially here in Europe, because I think Europe back in the days was a place when people just came and they were the best, obviously, because no one had no idea what jiu-jitsu is. But if you look at Europe right now, even at the last Europeans, we did relatively well. Even at black belt, there was Tommy Won, there was many people at podiums, things like this. So the level is definitely getting there, and that should push out or make people improve so that everyone has to be legit if you teach there. We need to raise the standards, I think. And people should also study. It's not that goddamn hard to study how you run classes, and you can't and also another thing,
It's time to run.
and the thing that pisses me off mostly is the loyalty and the respect side of jiu-jitsu, because people have to, and if I'm wrong, but people have to understand that jiu-jitsu is a service. The customer doesn't like it, the customer will go away, and there's nothing I can do about it.
And there's nothing wrong with doing it. There's nothing wrong leaving your gym and team if you feel like that's not what you want to pay for, because you are paying for it. It's not a divorce. It's not a family.
People are like, I feel so bad for my professor. Like, I don't like to train there, but I would go somewhere else. But I've been with him a long time. Listen, if the product is not good, you go. It's like me and Netflix. If it's terrible, I'll go to HBO. I think that's something that we need to go, because I don't think that happens in any other high-level sports. You go to where the training is for you. If you like to train that way, you go there. I'm sure that's for you. But if you're not happy where you are allowed to leave. This is a free market, like you said yourself. And this, I think, is something that in Europe is good, but I think it's something also we can improve on. This is in smaller places. No one in Dublin is training in a place where they don't like to train, because they have so much options. But maybe if you have only one option, you're stuck. But if you want to go, you go. It's not the end of the world. And if your coach doesn't understand, then he's a shit coach. Mm. He can call me out for that.
No, it makes a lot of sense again, and I would experience that with my own gym, and I fully accept if somebody says this is not for me and I go to train elsewhere. Okay, because there are probably guys that are training in my place. I don't really ask too many questions, but there are probably guys training in my place who left somewhere else or tried somewhere else and said that's not for me, and I come over and I'm, there's always somebody coming in for a trial class that never shows up again. I don't know whether they never show up again, like because they don't want to train jiu-jitsu, or they just say this gym is not for me, and I again fully expect it. And the good thing again in Dublin, we have enough variety of different styles that people can choose what suits them better, because a gym, an academy has to be of a certain vibe to fit your own kind of style and your personality, right? Like, what I mean? Sometimes it has nothing even to do with the actual jiu-jitsu. It's the
And I always think the gym has to improve. The customer doesn't have to improve. The customer is perfect if they want to come to train and they're willing to pay their monthly. That's all we can expect.
Yeah.
And they are. But if the business idea is that, oh, this is what we offer, and if you don't like it, get out of here.
Crunch.
You're not gonna survive in Europe. It's impossible. I don't know about other places because I've never run any businesses there. But for instance, in Finland, if you're training somewhere and then you leave and then the coach is like, oh, don't you care about the respect? They'll be like, get the fuck out of here. Because at the end of the day, I'm selling something. I'm selling a cup of coffee, let's call it. If the coffee is bad, the customer is going to go away. It's not the customer's fault. My product is shit. Or my product is not for them.
Yeah, maybe they like tea.
Yeah. So I think the coaches, I think the gym owners, and especially if you are in the situation where you are constantly talking about loyalty and whatnot, maybe you need to also look at yourself and like understand that they don't owe you anything. That's the first rule of business. You want to attract them.
And you owe them something because they are paying you.
Emilia is always telling me to smile more and be nicer to people. Because, like, you know, when I get into the zone where I'm training hard for a tournament, it's hard for me to, like, or it used to be hard for me to do, like, heavy rounds, go super hard, and then go talk with a parent about their kid having issues at school. But right now it's so easy, and I like it. And I like when they tell me about their issues and then maybe if there's anything I can do to help about it. But that's again something that the business has to be there for the customer. The customer doesn't need the business needs the customer, is how I look at it. So I need to be better, and I'm willing to, whatever I can do to improve, you can bet your money that I'll try to do that in future to sort of make it even better. Because when the progress stops, it's gonna die away. Is how I feel about it.
Yeah, it's a sort of getting away from the insecurity of covered by the kind of the false loyalty thing, because again, loyalty has to go both ways, and if you take the competition the right way, you will improve from it. It will push you. It will basically keep you on your toes all the time. That you have to keep improving, because sometimes you have no competition, or you just get everybody so scared of you of leaving you that you kind of to leave your cult that you just get contempt and you get just lazy with everything you do, and sooner or later it will explode or implode rather on you. But
absolutely, and it's also something that like used to happen. I don't think anymore as much, but like coaches would be like heavily invested in their students' lives, almost controlling their lives,
coaches.
And people think that when they become a jiu-jitsu black belt or when they become really good in jiu-jitsu that you also know about life, but like I can't tell anyone what to do with their life. People are so much smarter than me in life, and they can do. Sometimes it's amazing the people you meet at the jiu-jitsu tatamis with their white belt all fucked up, like hanging, and then you speak to them, and they're like, oh yeah, like I'm in the real estate business, and then after that you find out that the guy is worth 100 million euros and he has 60,000 rental apartments and things like this.
So imagine some black belt who has never done any real work other than jiu-jitsu, just competed and had a gym, then starting to tell that guy how to live their life.
Being like, bro, you need to keep your options open, and when you see your opportunity, things like this. Like this, some of the people that train with us are much smarter than the coach, even though if you're a black belt.
But it's again about the ego. Like you just can't have ego with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and I think as unfortunate as the current situation is with the COVID, because people have nothing to do, just a lot of things comes out that makes it very evident that, having a black belt doesn't really make you good at anything else necessarily. It might, you know what I mean? Like you might be good at certain things. We all like to think that, we are developed in other areas as well, but it doesn't automatically translate into other areas of life for sure.
Wish it would, but goddamn, I'm still stupid and just as amateur as I was before. But I was waiting for the power to like hit me the day I got my black belt.
The black belt power.
I was like, okay, I'm ready, but it never came.
Awesome stuff, guys. Thanks very much for joining.
Having us.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you do, please subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.